I'm the author of The Real Story of MH370. You can find all my work on X with the hashtag MH370X, or you can find it in my highlights. So as Mello just pointed out, from the investigation standpoint, this is the story of extremely intelligent people and talented people who came together on social media to find the truth. When they were censored, I took up the reins, and we've been telling the story since then. Unity should be the theme of these videos. In a divided world, these can bring us together. People may ask, why have we not gone to the media? The answer is we have. And we've also gone to prominent UFOlogy experts as well, and they, in general, will not respond. That's why I wrote the letter to Congress, which we're going to go over here recently, because I think that's the next step in order to get a formal investigation into these videos and prove their authenticity. No major media to this point has contacted me, not a single one. It seems like it's coordinated. They are willing to put a kid who saw aliens in his backyard in Vegas on national news, but they won't come and talk to me, somebody who has all this evidence lined up, who's challenging the official narratives and the official experts.
I always tell people on X, watch out. You guys start criticizing each other, you guys start talking shit about anyone, you're gonna trigger another teal ribbon parade, which is fine. You know, let's do another round of teal ribbons. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the teal ribbons. They're a little silly, but what always comes right after a teal ribbon parade is, in ufology on UFO Twitter, we now all have to suck down another round of MH370. It's obligatory. It comes automatically. You can't say no. Mario Nawfal. Malaysia has restarted the search for missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, with Ocean Infinity leading the hunt on a no-find, no-fee basis. The company will receive $70 million if wreckage is located. The renewed effort follows years of unanswered questions after the plane vanished in 2014 with 239 people on board. Families of the victims hope for closure, while investigators remain puzzled over why the aircraft veered off course into the Indian Ocean. The search covers 15,000 square kilometers. I guess these are arrows pointing out where they plan to look for debris for the plane MH370, which you may or may not remember, but you should. You should have at least a little tiny bit, even if you're not a ufologist. And we'll give you a little bit here. Ashton Forbes, 4 orbs. The man, the myth, the legend.
Everybody, to another episode of Hard Truths Podcast. I'm your host, Ashton Forbes. Today, I have another very special guest. I have Nick Pope. Nick Pope is a UFO investigator who has worked with the British government, the equivalent of the DoD, and researched the UFO phenomenon for many decades. So, Nick, thank you very much for being on my show today.
Thank you for having me.
Real bombastic character. Kind of took UFO Twitter by storm about a year and a half ago, right after Grush. So Grush hits. Grush gets debunked. The debunking, and especially the Klippenstein release of public medical records or police records, triggers a teal ribbon parade, the teal ribbon campaign of 2023. Kind of right as the teal ribbon parade is kind of like just dying off. Bam. Ashton Forbes, MH370, explodes onto UF Twitter and is just amazing. The sensationalism on UFO Twitter was second to none. kind of seemed to have hit UFO Twitter with kind of a pretty good strategy. Probably had a pretty good plan from the very beginning. The way that he rolled out the videos and the stream, the X spaces, the YouTube channel, the whole caricature of Ashton. It was hard to not like and share. But UFO Twitter did not respond well. Ashton is got to be in the top 5, top 3. Depends on how you're sorting him out. He's got to be in the top of everyone's villain list for UFO Twitter. So MH370, let's go find his map here. It's got to be in here somewhere. Did I write it down? Totes. It's like right here. We'll pause it even. MH370 takes off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport bound for Beijing, China at 16:42 UTC, March 7th, 2014. It's a long ass time ago. It's got a cargo of passengers and a whole shit ton of lithium batteries, which nowadays, due to events like this one and others, you are not allowed to ship lithium batteries in this manner. There's a lot of regulations regarding how you transport lithium batteries, which wasn't the case in 2014. So sometime after it takes off, the plane catches fire. It's probably before it drops its altitude and changes its course drastically. And what they say here on this first IGARI waypoint at 1721 UTC is they say that the plane went dark right then. So that's what the black line. All of the other location info from this plane comes from other sources. Satellite data, cell phone data, and witness accounts. So the plane goes dark and drops in altitude. I guess 40 minutes roughly after it takes off. And so Ashton and the officials, Malaysia officials mostly, but also U.S. government officials and U.S. military officials, say that a fire broke out at some point and the plane turns. The official story and everyone else's story, like Ashton's story, veers at this point. In the official story, they don't know what happened. They do rely on witnesses to say that they see the airplane, which is glowing orange, flies over Penang. The official story wants to have you believe that the pilot of MH370 was suicidal, was planning to kill himself on this flight by plunging the airplane into the ocean. Flies over his home city of Penang for one last view, then bolts off into this direction, crashes the airplane. Ashton points out a lot of witness accounts in the city, fishers on boats that sees the airplane. It sees the airplane flying really low. It's on fire. It's glowing orange. The path of the plane is kind of mapped out by satellites and cell phone pings. People see the airplane flying very low and on fire, flying over the city. Fishermen in their boats see it out here. The line gets solid around here because everyone accepts witness accounts of the plane flying very low. starting here on fisherman boats, people on the islands here. And then the plane does this little curlicue. And there's witnesses that see it turning. And then where the black dot's at is where the videos that Ashton is pushing kind of take over the narrative. So the plane takes off, goes dark, changes directions, flies over this other big city. Witnesses see it. The witnesses describe the plane as on fire. It's glowing orange. It's flying very low. People on boats see it turning over here. But then there's videos of what Ashton says is from a couple different satellites that he proves what kind of satellites they are. There's official NSA and official government satellites that have kind of unofficial sister satellites right next to them that are pretending to be debris, but they're actually spy satellites. There's a particular satellite and its sister that catch video of the plane. And because of the type of video, and he explains the type of video, the military satellite video from above, and then there's also this other really cool system that takes info from all over the place and makes a 3D battle space projection. So he's got those videos, and that shows the airplane turning, flying low, shows some orbs flying around the airplane, and then the airplane zaps and disappears. Some people say it exploded. Ashton and his pals say that it was transported away. And he basically says to Diego Garcia Naval Base. And the reason that they say that is because there's cell phone kind of logs of where the cell phones ended up at. And passenger victims' families for weeks after the plane crashed, and the authorities were searching off over here to the left of Malaysia for a debris field, which is never found. While all that's happening, cell phone calls are happening from the passengers to their families. And they're just like, when they answer it, no one's there. And the victims' families are trying to call the victims, trying to call the passengers, and their cell phone calls start going through at some point. And so there's records of that convince Ashton and his pals that the plane was transported from the little black dot over to Diego Garcia. And so I think that's kind of the basic story of MH370. It's modern, 2014, but that's not any time recently. Takes off, catches fire, goes dark, flies over Penang, then flies out over the ocean and crashes. But Ashton's got super secret spy satellite video of the plane right here. And, it shows you through all the records, all the data, that's where the satellites are looking. And orbs show up and zap the plane. Maybe it's destroying the plane, or it's being transported off somewhere else. Some of the time into King Tut's tomb. And so then that's where the Ashton part of the story kind of starts 15 years later, right? And he starts pushing these satellite videos, which everyone nowadays says are fakes and hoaxes. I don't think even today that he's actively calling them hoaxes, even though you'll look through his video library here, and there's a lot of videos going over the satellite footage and the hoaxes and the original source footage, and him trying to source out the person who leaked the source footage. So Ashton kind of takes over the story 15 years later by pushing the satellite video footage. That turns into a crazy hellfire season of UFO Twitter, October 2023 era of people just going ape shit over Ashton, saying that he's victimizing the families by pushing this false narrative that the families could have survived. And he's coming back with, well, I've got all this evidence and a guy who leaked it. And that's where the story's at today in the last 2 weeks. Is they found the guy after he got out of jail who leaked the original footage, which basically they've decided it's this guy, Edward C. Lin, who was flying on a spy plane. That's where he was seeing the video and taking the video of the video and then leaked it. And so the Ashton story just keeps going from there, because as he goes through the hoax video or the non-hoax video, basically he starts proving all the different sciences. Also takes on the US and Malaysia governments on their official narratives. One of the cool things that would always kind of get my attention when Ashton was talking about it is the Malaysian government came out very quickly. So probably around this time, 1800 UTC is when the Malaysian government comes out and says, yeah, we've lost this plane, but we know there's no threat. Which Ashton says, well, they're either in communication with the plane, which they say they're not, or they can see it. They're tracking it, which they say they can't. But the reason they would say that there's no threat is because they've already seen it drop altitude and fly over the city, and now it's headed out here. And he kind of tops it off with, the Malaysian government talks to the American government. The American government tells the Malaysian government, there's no threat. The plane's not going to crash into any buildings or schools or anything because it's flown out here over the ocean and crashed. Or we took care of it. So that's how the officials, when they're first making their initial press conferences, are able to tell everyone that they know that there's no threat. And so from there, the official narrative goes to be that the pilot, crashed the plane into the sea and committed suicide after flying over his home city and looking at it one last time. Ashton spends a lot of time trying to convince and explain to everyone and show the evidence that that pilot was not suicidal or planning to commit suicide. And then we get into the orbs. So from there, for the last year and a half, we've been battling it out with Ashton over the science, the same sciences that we talk about and battle it out in ufology all the time, about super semiconductors, flux capacitors, teleportation, and 0-point energy. And so since then, Ashton Forbes has become a physicist and funded 0-point energy devices. This is one of the most recent podcasts from Ashton Forbes, the Hard Truth Podcast, and it's got this character Nick Pope on it.
That being said, as I mentioned earlier, you don't really know whether something is legal or not. You can have a belief that it's legal, but until and unless it's challenged in court and a judge decides on it, then arguably you're in a grey area. But this is very important because this goes back to, of course, what nearly happened a little while ago with the Schumer-Rounds amendment.
So besides tracking down his hero leaker, Ashton has grown up and transitioned entirely into a regular-ass ufology podcast. And it ain't half bad. like I said, one of the top 5 UFO Twitter villains of all time for sure. Doesn't do half bad podcast. Only the most craziest and kookiest of the ufology characters will show up on his podcast because he is so partisan in the UFO Twitterverse. But it's still netted in people like characters of high esteem like Nick Pope, who characterizes himself as the Fox Mulder of England. Says he ran the UFO files there. Nowadays he calls them the UAP files. So Ashton Forbes, I think, is solid, fun stuff. Whether you disagree with him or not, whether you believe his science or not, whether you're in his new UFO religion or not, he sure took UFO Twitter by storm. MH370 is a fun ride. When you get to the Ashton part, it just gets wild. And it's still given, even today, as he tracks down his hero leaker. And talks mad shit on the new search for MH370 and the fact that no debris field's ever been found to date. I recommend it to any ufology student. You're going to have to spend a few hours on this stuff, but it's going to be worth it.